Fear in Colombia tonight.
Colombia's drug bosses bombing and burning buildings and homes in Medellin.
A la mierda el cartel de Cali. A la mierda Judy Moncada. A la mierda los Castaños.
Pablo Escobar is a name that will always come up whenever there is a conversation about famous drug lords. He is popularly known as the king of cocaine, a man who spent his life producing and smuggling drugs. He is also regarded as the richest criminal in the history of the world, but what many don't know is how he attained that position. In today's video, we will be taking a dive into Pablo Escobar's life and how he became the king of smuggling. Early life of Pablo Escobar. The world's most famous drug lord, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, was born on 1 December 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia. He was one of 7 children whose father was a small-scale farmer and mother, a teacher. With 7 children, Pablo's parents found it hard to sustain the family with the little income they made. Shortly after he was born, Pablo's family relocated to Envigado, a suburb in Medellin. Life was not easy for the family, but Pablo's parents strived hard to make sure he went to school. However, Pablo threw away that opportunity in 1966 when he dropped out of high school a few weeks before his 17th birthday. As a school dropout, Pablo easily fell into the streets and started living the life of a gangster, which was common on the streets of Medellin. After 2 years on the streets, Pablo and his cousin Gustavo Gaviria decided to leave the streets and return to school, but their lives had changed so much that they found it difficult to blend in with other students. They had become bullies and did not hesitate to treat other students badly. So after a year of trying to be in school, the two dropped out again and went back to their lifestyle. Although Pablo had dropped out of high school, he did not plan to end his education there, so he forged a high school certificate, which he used to gain admission into college. He aspired to one day become a criminal lawyer before venturing into politics and then becoming a president, which is why he wanted to further his education. Unfortunately, all his hopes and dreams came crashing down when he could not raise the money required to pay college tuition. When Pablo saw that getting a college degree was not going to be possible, he had to find a means of survival. He soon started stealing and reselling tombstones. He would take his time to clean out the inscriptions on the tombstones before selling them. Pablo developed an inclination towards violence and crime from a young age, and it didn't take him long to choose the path of crime for himself. His journey down that path began when he formed a small gang made up of people who were willing to kidnap others and collect ransom money. The gang remained under the shadows for a while until their name became popular for kidnapping Diego Echeverria, who was a known businessman. Echeverria's family paid $50,000 to Pablo's group, but when it was time to release the man, Pablo changed his mind and decided to kill the man instead. When the gang was not asking for ransom money, they were indulging in other criminal activities like car theft. Stealing cars led to Pablo's first arrest, which occurred in the year 1974. Pablo was still very young when he was arrested. The experience could have made him change his ways and lead a normal life, but he was a true rebel who was willing to go deeper into a crime. Pablo's connection to organized crime started long before the cocaine industry made its way into Colombia in the mid-1970s. The sale of cocaine in Colombia spread really fast due to the country's closeness to Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru, which were the highest distributors of cocoa at the time. Cocaine is synthesized from cocoa, and Colombia had a steady supply from these countries. As a smart young man, Pablo saw a potential in the cocaine business and immediately grabbed it with wide open arms. Next, Pablo set out to take down any drug trafficker that would stand as a competition for him. The first person he targeted was a known Medellin drug lord, Fabio Restrepo, who was murdered in 1975. Although it was never confirmed, many people believe that Pablo killed the man, took over his drug operations, and turned them into his own. Pablo soon started making huge sums from the drug trade and thought it was time to take a wife. So in 1976, Pablo got married to the love of his life, Maria Victoria Henao. At the time of their marriage, Henao was just a teenager and was 11 years younger than Pablo Escobar, but she was in love with him and married him even though her parents did not approve of it. Building a drug empire. Soon after fulfilling his desire to start a family, Pablo decided it was time to take his drug business to the next level. In the mid-1970s, Pablo and another man known as Carlos Lederk came together to co-found the Medellin cartel, which would later turn Pablo into the richest criminals in history. The Medellin cartel started to specialize in the production of cocaine, after which they would transport and sell throughout Colombia. Within a short period, they began to purchase cocoa paste in larger quantities from Bolivia and Peru, then go ahead to process the coca into cocaine. Pablo's desire to expand his business did not stop in Colombia. He soon started smuggling and distributing his product into the United States. Pablo slowly grew his empire for a few years without the government noticing him, but things took a drastic turn in May 1976. He had just finished a drug trade in Ecuador and was on his way back when he was arrested by the Colombian Security Service, DAS, after they found 39 kilograms of cocaine carefully hidden inside his car's spare tire. Pablo was charged with possession of drugs, but he found a way to turn the situation to favor him. He was let off the hook after he managed to influence a judge to set him and his colleagues free by bribing him. A year after his arrest, the DAS agent who arrested him was brutally murdered. Pablo had come up with a method of solving his problems using bribery or murder. No one was too big for him to intimidate or bribe, including politicians and law enforcement officers. It became common knowledge that people who refused to accept bribes to favor him would lose their lives to cartel hitmen. Pablo often used the catchphrase, plata o plomo,
Plata o plomo,
which means silver or lead. Silver was used to represent bribe money and lead represented bullets. He would give a person the opportunity to choose between money or death. Even though he had been noticed by the government, Pablo's drug business continued to grow at a fast rate, and he soon became very rich. His dreams of becoming a politician started to crawl back into his mind, and this time he had enough money to achieve the dream. So he started to make big donations to various politicians to help fund their campaigns. The politicians he endorsed were sure of getting elected, and by that means Pablo gathered a long list of government officials who would happily do his bidding anytime he called. With his connections to people in high places, Pablo was able to keep the Medellin cartel in business without getting in trouble with the government. In 1978, Pablo visited a farm where he met with other drug lords who gave him ideas on how to greatly increase his business. The information he got from these drug lords proved helpful as Pablo's drug trafficking business increased exponentially. By the end of that year, the Medellin cartel had smuggled about 19,000 kilograms of cocaine into the United States. As the demand for cocaine in the United States continued to rise, Pablo positioned himself and the cartel to supply as much cocaine as they could. He found new smuggling routes and created better distribution networks in various parts of the country. At the peak of his career, at the peak of his glory days, Pablo led the cartel into producing cocaine in large quantities and supplying it to every corner of Colombia, as well as the United States. The used drug mules soon became an issue for Pablo. He began searching for better ways of smuggling, and eventually got the idea of using aircrafts to move drugs into the United States. Pablo then purchased a plane called Cessna, which he used for his first aircraft smuggling operation. The Cessna was built with powerful engines of about 180 to 210 horsepower, larger fuel capacity, making it able to fly for up to 1289 kilometers. For his first operation with aircrafts, Pablo was able to smuggle 250 kilograms of cocaine, which was worth $15 million. When compared to using drug mules, using aircrafts proved more efficient and less expensive, so Pablo opted to use more aircrafts and less mules. Flying soon became a major part of his business, so Pablo built a place on an island called Norman's Cay where he could easily fly from. He and another associate, Robert Vesco, spent a fortune to acquire a large expanse of land on the island. The island came with a 1-kilometer airstrip, a harbor, a hotel, and houses. Pablo also acquired boats and more aircrafts for his business. As the cartel produced larger amounts of cocaine, preservation and storage soon became a problem for them. Pablo immediately utilized the island and built a large refrigerated warehouse for proper storage of the cocaine. With all the facilities put in place, Norman's Cay served as the Medellin cartel's major smuggling route for years. The island gave them an opportunity to increase productivity, easy smuggling, and reduce cost of smuggling. Pablo would fly from Colombia into the United States carrying about 300 to 500 kilos of cocaine every weekend. The use of aircrafts put Pablo on a fast pace, and soon he became a wealthy and influential person in Colombia. By the mid-1980s, Pablo had become the king of smuggling. He controlled more than 80% of the drugs that made into the United States, and the cartel recorded a daily supply of 15 tons of cocaine smuggled into the U.S. It was estimated that at his peak, Pablo and his cartel were raking in as much as $420 million weekly. Forbes soon recognized the drug lord and named him one of the 10 richest people on earth, as his net worth at the time was estimated to be around $30 billion. Pablo owned several aircrafts for smuggling. However, he got so rich that he bought a special plane which he only used whenever he wanted to transport his money. Pablo loved to spend his money on luxury things. He owned a fleet of cars, bikes, boats, and aircrafts. One of his most prized possessions was his estate called Hacienda, Naples. The estate was built on 20 kilometers of land, which he spent millions of dollars to acquire. He spent more money to lavishly build the estate to his taste, with the goal of providing his family with the finest things in life. Pablo's estate contained sights and things that the average man could only dream of owning. It contained a sculpture garden, an airstrip, a private bullring, a soccer field, a lake, and a zoo that housed various exotic animals, including elephants, giraffes, camels, antelopes, birds, and hippopotamus. Pablo was a lover of animals and very particular about the zoo. He made sure that the animals were well attended to. His fame and philanthropy. Unlike many drug lords, Pablo's fame did not only come from being a drug lord. He was loved by many in Medellin for his philanthropy and kindness. His wife once described him as a kind man who always wanted to help the poor, and perhaps that was his reason for wanting to become a politician. Before delving into politics, Pablo visited the poor neighborhoods in Medellin, where he spent millions building roads, power lines, and supplying them with basic amenities required for survival. He went as far as building roller skating rinks and soccer fields where the youths could visit for recreation. As you can imagine, he won the hearts of the people. At some point, he partnered with the director of city planning to build a complex of 5,000 homes for the homeless. The people soon began to call him Robin Hood Pays, which meant that they saw him as a Robin Hood figure. The people loved him because he provided more for them than the government. Apart from helping poor neighborhoods, Pablo was also known to pay his workers handsomely. He paid them enough to get them out of the slums and help them lead better lives. Seeing the joy he brought to the people rekindled his youthful dreams of becoming a president. He already had the love and respect of the people, so he decided it was time to go into politics. He joined the Liberal Party of Colombia, and in 1982, he was elected as an alternate member of the Colombian Congress. As an alternate member of the Congress, Pablo was granted parliamentary immunity and the right to a diplomatic passport under Colombian law. He had taken a step closer to his dream, however. It didn't take long before the dream died again. Pablo's time as a politician was cut short after the then Minister of Justice conducted an investigation on him and proved that Pablo was in fact a drug lord. The minister uncovered Pablo's dirty business, exposed him publicly, and forced him to resign the position. That was the end of Pablo's political journey, but he made sure to take his revenge on the minister. Few months after the public humiliation, the Minister of Justice was killed in a drive-by shooting, and it is believed that Pablo was responsible for his death. Unfortunately, the minister wasn't the last politician to take a hit from Pablo. One candidate for the 1989 presidential elections, Louis Gallon, received a taste of Pablo's wrath after announcing that if he were elected as president, he would make sure Pablo was extradited to the United States. Gallon made the mistake of openly announcing his plans for Pablo, not knowing that Pablo had vowed never to be extradited. Pablo swiftly assigned a hitman to take down Gallon during one of his campaigns. The hitman aimed his gun at Gallon and took the shot, but Gallon narrowly escaped death by some miracle. Pablo's attempt on his life did not scare Gallon enough to quit his campaign. Pablo was not a man who would back down after one trail, so he planned another attack on Gallon. When Galen visited the town of Socha, he was trailed by a hitman who opened fire on him just as he climbed a stage to make a speech. Pablo had won, but his hitman was arrested and later confessed that he was offered $500,000 to kill Galen. This incident marked the beginning of Pablo's reign of terror in Colombia. He was willing to kill anyone who made mention of extraditing him to the United States. Pablo's war against the government. After the death of Galen, the Colombian government started searching for Pablo, but he was a master in the art of evading capture. He very well knew that if was arrested, the government would not hesitate to extradite him, and that was something he dreaded. He was more willing to die in Colombia than to be locked up in any American prison. After a while of being in hiding, Pablo came up with a proposal for the government. He agreed to surrender himself to the authorities on the condition that he would not be extradited. The government's first response to his request was negative, so Pablo decided to get his wish by any means possible. He created a group called Los Extraditable, made up of several drug lords who were also against extradition. The group's primary goal was to force the government to agree to a no extradition clause that would grant amnesty to any drug lord who willingly quit the drug trade. Their motto was, "We prefer a grave in Colombia to a prison in the United States." When they realized that the government was not willing to bend the law for them, the group turned to violence and fought the government in every possible way. Pablo's war against the government took a dark turn in November 1989 when he instructed his cartel members to plant a bomb on the Avianca Flight 203. He believed that a presidential candidate, Cesar Gaviria Trujillo, would be on the flight and decided to assassinate him. Pablo's plan failed because Trujillo missed the flight, but the other 107 passengers on board lost their lives in the bomb blast. Although Pablo had so much blood on his hands, he did not stop there. A few days after the plane incident, Pablo placed another bomb inside a truck and parked it in front of the Colombian Security Service building. The bomb killed more than 50 people and injured thousands. Pablo proved that he was as brutal as he was kind. He showed no mercy and killed without a care, all because he did not want to be extradited. However, it soon became extremely difficult for him to evade the government as they were putting more pressure in to find him. When he could no longer hide, Pablo started a negotiation with the government. He agreed to leave the cocaine business and cease all criminal activities and surrender himself if the government agreed to reduce his sentence and treat him specially while in prison. The end of a king. Pablo was smart and calculated all his moves before taking them. He waited patiently until a new Colombian constitution, which prohibited the extradition of Colombian citizens, was approved. In June 1991, Pablo Escobar surrendered himself to the government. Although he had fought a dirty fight and spilled the blood of many innocent people, Pablo managed to get his one wish, not being extradited. In agreement to his terms, the government granted Pablo the opportunity to build his own luxurious prison. After all, he was very rich and could afford it. The prison was called La Cathedral, but it was nothing like any other prison. It had features like a jacuzzi, a nightclub, a waterfall, a bar, and a football pitch. Pablo installed a large telescope in the prison which he used to look down into the city of Medellin whenever he pleased. He was fond of watching his daughter through the telescope, especially when was on the phone with her. Pablo continued to commit crime as usual, only that this time he was behind bars and had to pass instructions to the Medellin cartel through a telephone. He was allowed to keep phones, computers, and fax machines in La Cathedral, which made it easy for him to continue leading the cartel. Pablo was basically living a comfortable life in La Cathedral and controlled almost everything that happened there. The prison guards had been personally selected by Pablo and were all getting paid by him. With the level of comfort he was enjoying, Pablo was bound to abuse the special treatment he was allowed to have. He soon started torturing and killing cartel members inside the prison. Once the government heard of his behavior, they began making plans to move Pablo into a more conventional prison. However, before the plan was put in motion, Pablo was informed of it by one of the prison guards who was spying for him. In July 1992, Pablo broke out of prison through a tunnel he had put in place when the prison was still under construction. The secret escape route was hidden behind a thin wall which was easy to kick down. He crawled out of the tunnel and into the streets before anyone could realize that he had escaped. The government immediately declared a nationwide manhunt for the dangerous drug lord. They had no choice but to accept help from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, who were seeking to arrest Pablo for his drug-related crimes. Pablo Escobar became a fugitive and was on the run for the next 16 months. A special task force called the Search Block was created for the sole purpose of finding him. Being a master of evasion, Pablo remained hidden for as long as possible, but one mistake led the search block right to his hideout. Pablo Escobar came to the end of the road on the 2nd of December 1993, just a day after celebrating his 44th birthday. That night, he was speaking to his son, Juan Pablo Escobar, over the phone when the Colombian electronic surveillance team intercepted the call. They traced Pablo's phone to his hideout in Los Olivos, Medellin. By the time Pablo realized that he had been found, it was too late for him to escape. He and his bodyguard, Alvaro de Jesus Agudelo, also known as El Limon, tried their best to escape, but the search block opened fire on them. Pablo took several bullets to his leg and chest area and one bullet to the ear. The news of Pablo's death brought joy to the government, but the people of Medellin were saddened by it. Pablo Escobar's name has remained on the lips of many, even though he died over a decade ago. He strategically placed himself at the top of the cocaine industry during his time, which earned him the title, King of Smuggling. Till today, Colombia receives thousands of tourists who are interested in Pablo Escobar's story and are seeking some adventure.